Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, it's Mock Draft Monday. We roll through another 7-round Philadelphia Eagles mock draft. This time, it's Blockbuster Trade Edition. What would happen if the Eagles traded a few of their first-round draft picks? What would that mock draft look like? That's coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by BetOnline as you cover this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before because BetOnline is where the game starts. I'm Louis DiBiase. Thank you so much for joining us on this Monday edition of your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles. We thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day, Monday through Friday. We have a podcast for you on all podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube in video form. And we're always on Twitter talking birds all throughout the day at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase LOE, and at GC24_football. The NFL scouting combine kicks off tomorrow. So we are officially, we had the Senior Bowl, the East-West Shrine game, now the Combine. Draft season is upon us. Eagles general manager Howie Roseman is joining the media at 2:30 tomorrow, so we'll have takes on that for the podcast. For the Combine, practices are now prime time. So for our 9-to-5ers out there, you get to watch the practices. You're not going to miss them as you maybe used to when they were in the mornings. They are going to be prime time in the evening Eastern time. So the Combine is among us starting tomorrow. Gino and I did a preview of the Combine on Saturday's edition of the show, diving into what players on offense and defense to keep a close eye on. And also on Tuesday, we did a show as well, where we dove more into the philosophical, discussion of the Combine, the pros and cons of it, what teams should take out of it, what they shouldn't. Same with prospects, what there is to gain for a player at the Combine, what there is to lose as well. So you can find those podcasts on all platforms. And throughout the week, we'll have our takeaways on YouTube and on the platforms. So again, subscribe to both audio and video. But today is Monday, so our flagship show of the podcast, Mock Draft Monday, continues to roll on. And what we'd like to do with Mock Draft Monday right here on Locked On Eagles, each week we like to do something different, right? It's not always just all right, the Eagles are at pick 15, 16, and 19. Let's take the best player availables at all three spots. We like to experiment. First off, we like to take different players, have different discussions on prospects that could interest the Eagles at certain positions, but we like to, prepare you for all scenarios. What if the Eagles were to keep all three picks and just sit tight? What if they double dipped at a position? What if they took two edge rushers? What if they took a rookie quarterback in the first round? What if they traded up? What if they traded down? We like to go through all of that for you to prepare you because the draft is so unpredictable. And for all these mock drafts that we do and NFL teams do as well, no one really knows what's going to happen. Every single year, these mock drafts kind of go out the window when it comes to predictability, but you do need them to help prepare you for all these scenarios. That's why we like to use it in this way and use it less in a predictive form, because that's the way they really should be utilized. Really laying out for you all these different scenarios that could play out. What would you do if this unexpected thing happens? Or, what would you do? How would this scenario play out? How would you get your edge rusher if you decide to trade this pick or this pick? You know what I mean? So I think that's the value of mock drafts and the value of it for Mock Draft Monday on LOE. Today's mock draft, I'm going to switch it up. A lot of talk today was about the Eagles and Russell Wilson. Again, that was the theme of debates on Eagles Twitter, whether you like it or not. If the Eagles did make a blockbuster trade, and not just for a quarterback like Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson, but hypothetically, if they traded a first-round pick for another position. I heard rumors this weekend that the Seahawks could maybe make DK Metcalf available. Not sure how legitimate that is, but, Calvin Ridley is on the trade block. Who knows now with Amari Cooper, what's going on with him and the Dallas Cowboys. What I wanted to do with today's mock draft, because Howie Roseman himself is very unpredictable, and he does a lot of different things. He's moved up draft boards. He's moved down. He has sat tight. He's traded picks for veterans as well, though. Today's mock is if the Eagles were to make a blockbuster trade before the draft that involved first-round picks. Hypothetically, most this one is mostly geared towards a potential Russell Wilson trade, but it could also mean they traded for another quarterback, a veteran star receiver, an edge rusher, something like that. This mock draft is about having fewer first round picks and how that would change your strategy, right? If you will have fewer first round picks as linebacker off the board, are you not willing to take a safety? Really, does it come down to more of your core values because you only have, based on positions and importance of positions, because you only have, a certain amount of picks compared to what you did have because of a blockbuster trade. So that's what we're going to do. Let's say the Eagles, and for this hypothetical, they trade for Russell Wilson. They give up 2 of the first round draft picks this year. They give up a 4th round pick this year. They give up a future pick as well that, we'll just kick the can down the road in Howie Roseman's salary cap terms. And we'll worry about that later on. Maybe you throw in Jalen Hurts and Andre Dillard, right, to find a way to keep one of those first round picks. So let's say this is a post Russell Wilson blockbuster trade mock draft where they have a first round pick still, a second, a third. They give away a 4th round pick. So 2 fewer picks on day 1, 3 fewer picks, I should say, on day 1 and early on day 3. I think it'll switch it up a little bit, and I'm excited to get into this mock draft, and let's start it up. So again, I did that hypothetical trade for this scenario where I dealt the 15th overall pick, the 16th overall pick, and the Eagles' first 4th round pick to the Seattle Seahawks for Russell Wilson. Also trading in this hypothetical, Jalen Hurts, Andre Dillard, the very popular hypothetical trade proposal that you're seeing right now along many Eagles media platforms and Twitter as well. So the Eagles still manage to keep, they get Russell Wilson and they get the 19th overall draft pick. So they get their star quarterback. They have their offensive line intact. Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders on offense, Quez Watkins as well, heading into year 2 as a full-time starter. The offense is looking really good. In this scenario, it definitely does hurt the Eagles' defense 100% because these picks, I'd imagine, if the Eagles keep them, those 4 picks on day 1 and day 2 of the second round, those are mostly going to go, I would imagine, towards the defense, considering the Eagles' young offensive nucleus is intact. So with Russell Wilson now coming in, though, the Eagles prioritize getting an elite quarterback, right? As they should. So now you only have 1 pick at 19, though. What do you do? Again, I think this would change their perspective because if they have 15 and 16, they might be willing more to say, hey, at 19, we can afford to take Nakobe Dean at linebacker. Hey, Trent McDuffie at cornerback. Maybe we want to take our CB2 this year, even though we have Darius Slay and Avonte Maddox. But when you only have 19 overall because of the Wilson trade, that does change it up a bit. For me, in this scenario, the Eagles would go towards the bread and butter. Offensive lineman, defensive lineman, maybe wide receiver is something they prioritize investing a lot of ammunition in. In this scenario, I would go with an edge rusher. You have to come away with one of these guys in this class, and not a lot fell. So you have Kayvon Thibodeau going early, Aiden Hutchinson as well, Jermaine Johnson going in the top 10, a lot of edge rushers. Trayvon Walker going to Baltimore at 14, David Ojabo at 15, which was the Eagles' pick to Seattle at 15 overall. But there is a player still available in George Carloftus at Purdue who does fall. And Carloftus is a player that has an extremely high floor. You're going to lose Derek Barnett. You're going to lose, in a good way, Ryan Kerrigan. All you have is Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham. I think the Eagles would have to come away with an edge rusher. I think they would also like the safety of Carloftus. I think he's going to be a pretty safe prospect that's going to be a starter from day 1. And when you trade all these assets for Russell Wilson, you want to make sure you get a starter in day 1. And Carloftus, for me, I'm more worried about his ceiling compared to these other players. But I wouldn't say he's a Chase Winovich type that I'm nervous just can't become a star. His athleticism does not compare to a Ojabo or Thibodeau or Jermaine Johnson, but he also isn't like a C-plus athlete. I think you're going to be surprised with how he tests out at the combine. So I'm going to go with, and look, I went back and forth, like Jamison Williams at receiver from Alabama, Trent McDuffie, the corner from Washington, Nakobe Dean, the linebacker from Georgia. I did consider Drake London, the receiver from USC as well. But I'm going to go with what I think the Eagles would do here. And they would take George Carloftus. Long, can play well against the run. He got to the quarterback consistently at Purdue, and he is your starter opposite Josh Sweat, who's your pass rush specialist, with Brandon Graham coming back as well. So that is the Eagles' first round selection, only one in this scenario, because they do in fact trade for Russell Wilson, giving up 16 overall and as well 15. So Carloftus to me makes a lot of sense there, based on what the Eagles, how their focus would shift for sure. So, it's not a super sexy pick, but I do think that it would be very realistic in this scenario. All right, pick 51 in round 2. So the Eagles got their edge rusher. You could consider double dipping. There's still some guys I really like. Drake Jackson from USC, Nick Bonito, the edge from Oklahoma, Ebiketie from Penn State. But we already got our edge rusher in Carloftus. We're going to go back to a few other positions that you would have considered in day one if you had 3 first-round picks, but it's linebacker, it's safety, it's corner. Unfortunately, my boy Tariq Woolen went off the board here. So I like Kaiir Elam from Florida. He is a lengthy corner that I think the Eagles want a lengthy physical corner opposite Slay with Avonte Maddox in the slot. I like him here. Lewis Seen and Jalen Petrie, the safeties from Georgia and Baylor. But I still think the Eagles are going to spend a lot of money at safety and free agency. Somebody like Marcus Williams, a big fish free agent. Let's go to wide receiver. I don't love John Mechie III from Alabama. I think that's too rich for this, this selection. So I'm going to go with a linebacker or a corner. And Christian Harris is sitting there at 39 overall prospect from Alabama. I'm going to go with Kaiir Elam, though, the cornerback from Florida. And he's kind of had a fall from grace, probably because of all the hype that, Sauce Gardner's getting, Derek Stingley. You have Tariq Woolen now being a big-time my guy for a lot of draft analysts out there because of the traits. You have Trent McDuffie, who Daniel Jeremiah loves, and a lot of draft heads like, you have as well Andrew Booth. Like, it's a good cornerback class for sure. So Kaiir Elam has kind of fallen by the wayside, and I think that would be good value for the Eagles at 51. And again, he doesn't have to come in right away because I don't think he'd be ready to cover a team's wide receiver 1 every single game, but he won't have to, considering he'll be the 3rd best corner in 2022. And who knows, if you re-sign Steven Nelson, he might not have to start at all. So I think Elam in the 2nd round would be good value for the Eagles, and they go with an edge rusher and corner with their first 2 selections. We're up here in the 3rd round at pick 83. One more pick before we take a break. And I'm thinking now maybe linebacker. This is around the range the Eagles would take one. Maybe wide receiver. Wendell Robinson from Kentucky, I really like. Explosive, a slot receiver. If you're comfortable with Quez Watkins at the Z, Devontae Smith at the X, and you're not trying to fit that, physical tall receiver into this offense, if you're okay with just straight production, even though some of these receivers are built kind of similarly, Wendell Robinson would be an interesting option. At safety, don't really love the board. We're at 83 overall. Sterling Weatherford is the best player available. He's the 124th overall ranked prospect. I feel like the Eagles could take a lineman maybe here at Ingram, the interior from LSU. I don't think tackle would be something they would consider. Tight end, maybe. Jake Ferguson from Wisconsin, I really like. I'm going to go, though, with a interior, or I should say a edge rusher that can kind of play the Sam linebacker role as well. He's from Penn State, and I think he is underrated here right now. It's Jesse Luketa. I think Luketa is a player that he dominated the Senior Bowl. First off, I thought he looked really good in the game on Saturday. And with this role with the Eagles, Jannard Avery was a guy that they used a lot to rush the passer. He was also playing in space at times. I know we took Carloftus there with that 19th overall draft pick, but I feel like Luketa can be that hybrid player with a higher ceiling than Avery that I think Jonathan Gannon would want in this defense. And I think Luketa is going to be around a 3rd round draft pick. So, is he the middle linebacker, every down backer you'd expect with a 3rd round pick like a Davian Taylor, right? I don't think he's not a stand-up inside linebacker, but he is a hybrid that in the 3rd round could fit a role the Eagles are looking for. So those are my 3 selections with the top 3 picks in this mock draft. George Karlaftis, the edge rusher from Purdue, the Florida cornerback, Kaiir Elam, with the 51st overall pick, and then Jesse Lucida with our third round selection, the linebacker from Penn State, 83 overall. Because again, we traded the 15th and 16th pick in the first round for Russell Wilson, and we also dealt a fourth rounder as well. We'll go through and finish up this mock draft rounds 4 through 7 next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's podcast is sponsored by Built Bar. This is kind of the time of the year that some people like myself have given up on their New Year's resolutions, but we're not going to do that this year. We're going to eat right, and it's all thanks to Built Bar. And honestly, it's not even going to feel like you're eating right because you're going to enjoy eating Built Bars. They taste just like a candy bar, but it's all of the flavor and none of the guilt. Only 130 calories in every bar, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. Well, Built Bar has all that flavor, but they're low calorie, high protein, and you can replace the candy bar with these delicious flavors of mint brownie, coconut almond, and new for this month as well is white chocolate cookies and cream. By the way, they have puffs now as well. They're the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, they're marshmallowy, and they're not just a protein bar. They are an absolute treat. They have cinnamony churro right now, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie. So good. Make sure you check out all these delicious options at built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15, LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, Eagles fans, welcome back in to this Monday edition of your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, Locked On Eagles. Louis DiBiase riding solo today. And today's scenario for the mock draft is a post-Blockbuster trade draft. Let's say the Eagles were to make a deal for a star quarterback like Russell Wilson. You know, maybe a Calvin Ridley or DK Metcalf. In that scenario, they wouldn't only have 1 first-round pick. They'd probably have 2. But again, it's a blockbuster trade kind of scenario where you give up 2 first-round picks. You give up something like a 4th in this scenario. You give up Jalen Hurts and Andre Dillard, and you land your star quarterback in Russell Wilson. What would you do? I feel like your mindset would change a little bit here. And I think the Eagles they want to, no matter what, come away with an edge rusher in this class. Tim McManus of ESPN said the Eagles are ready to invest significant resources in the defensive end position this offseason. And that is in the form of this mock draft of the 19th overall selection, George Karloftis, the edge rusher from Purdue, to go with Josh Sweat and Brandon Graham in 2022. But again, they're going to still want to add a high upside pass rusher, even if that's in free agency with like a Hassan Riddick. And Karloftis is kind of that, 3rd or 4th defensive end in year 1. But I think they would really be interested in my 3rd round pick, Jesse Lucida, the hybrid linebacker, Jannard Avery, Sam type of linebacker from Penn State. And then before that, in the 2nd round, I took a lengthy corner that I think was mostly seen for a while as a 1st-round talent that's kind of fallen out of favor lately just based on the hype of other prospects. Kaiir Elam, the corner from Florida, we selected with our 51st overall pick in the 2nd round. So we got an edge rusher, we got a cornerback, and we got a linebacker with our first 3 picks. Here in the 4th round at pick 122, I would almost kind of run to the podium with this pick. I really, really like Jake Ferguson from Wisconsin, and he is not a super sexy pick. He is not a star by any means. Like, he's not going to be your Zach Ertz or your new Dallas Goedert. But it's not going to be the Goddard-Ertz 1-2 punch at tight end. But when the Eagles, they're going to be mostly an 11 personnel offense in 2022 and beyond with Nick Sirianni. They were last year as well, even when they had Ertz and Goddard. But you still want to be able to play out of 12 personnel. You want to be able to have a second passing threat at tight end, because when you play 12 personnel, sometimes defenses go in their base package. And when you have pass catchers at tight end, you can take advantage of that base defense. Most base defense now is nickel or dime. So again, fewer and far between. But the point still remains is that when you have athletic tight ends, that gives you an advantage in play action and with matchups as well. If you can get them matched up on a linebacker, Ferguson has really strong hands. He's long, he's tall. He just catches everything. And I feel like Goddard is your flashy run after the catch, deep threat tight end. Ferguson would just be that perfect number 2. And I really liked Jack Stahl. I thought he run blocked really well, but you want to upgrade when it comes to receiving ability. And I want to come away, just like I want to come away with an edge rusher in this class, I really want a tight end from this class as well. And Ferguson is a favorite of mine late day 2, early day 3. And we get him early day 3 here with our 4th round selection out of Wisconsin. So we go with our first offensive player in the 4th round. Kind of unheard of for the Eagles in the draft, but again, in this scenario, they spent 2 firsts on an offensive player and a quarterback, and they spent a 4th rounder on him. So they still in this draft invested in offense pretty significantly. So we have back-to-back picks here now in round 5, 152 overall and 153. Let's look at running back. What do we got? Hassan Haskins from Michigan, Sincere McCormick from UTSA, Zamir White from Georgia. I don't know. I don't love that. At receiver, I like a couple guys here. I like Velus Jones Jr. from Tennessee. Really good route runner. Separated a lot when I was down in Mobile. Romeo Doubs as well. Strong pass catcher. Carson Strong's number 1 receiver from Nevada. Justin Ross from Clemson is also an interesting player here. Kind of fits that mold of a, bigger body wide receiver. If he didn't have the 2021 that he did, the injuries as well, would have been a much higher graded prospect, I think. But he fell out of favor last year, based on against the other prospects. So this would be good value. JT Woods from Baylor, I do like too. Maybe I'll go back to back here with a safety and a receiver. I think that's going to be the plan. I'm going to go with Justin Ross from Clemson with this 5th round pick. And so he can compete with, whatever in this scenario, whatever free agent wide receiver you get. Who knows? Maybe you do go for like a Christian Kirk or a DJ Chark. DJ Chark would be, I would like the Eagles to maybe double down. Like if they get a, 2nd tier, 3rd tier free agent receiver like a Chark, Justin Ross would be a nice competitive, added addition in the 5th round. And then at safety, I'm going to go with a guy I really like from Baylor, JT Woods. I really like those Baylor safeties, Jalen Petrie and JT Woods. Wore a lot of hats, versatile, good ball skills. And I just want to add depth. I want to add competition for Marcus Epps and Kevon Wallace. If you have Woods, Wallace, and Epps with like McLeod back in a big free agent signing, I think that's a good group of safeties. And between Epps, Wallace, and JT Woods, at least one of those guys will pan out where they'll be a reliable 3rd safety. I mean, Epps was last year, but maybe you can upgrade, maybe hit on some potential like JT Woods has, and maybe that pushes more potential out of Marcus Epps. All right, round 5 continues. We have another pick here, 161. See, this is the cool thing. People talk all the time about potentially mortgaging the future for Russell Wilson. In that kind of scenario, you're not mortgaging the future. Even if you had to give up 3 first-round picks, you still have, we gave up 2, which I think is realistic, and a 4th, and you still had a 1st, a 2nd, a 3rd, a 4th, and 3 fifths, 4 5th-round picks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 selections before round 5 is even over. And you get your franchise quarterback. So everybody that says don't sell the farm for a quarterback, number 1, you can never pay too much for an elite quarterback. But number 2, the Eagles really probably wouldn't even have to. They can still get pretty much everything they want. Not to the luxury of, having 3 firsts, but I'd rather have the luxury of having a top quarterback. So again, just use this mock draft as food for thought when considering what is too much in a trade package. You have the luxury this year of having so much draft ammunition that you wouldn't really have to sell your future. You can kind of have your cake and eat it too. Of course, that is if Seattle didn't want all 3 picks. All right, let's go to 161 here in round 5. I kind of want to come away with a running back here and add some competition. You never know with Miles Sanders' future. Kenny Gainwell is the only guy you're going to have for more than 1 more year. Boston Scott and Jordan Howard are free agents. Hassan Haskins is a safe pick. Pierre Strong, I actually like from South Dakota State. I think he'd be the most versatile guy that has the most bang for your buck here. I actually like him higher than the Draft Network grade. So I'm going to go with Pierre Strong Jr. from South Dakota State, which would be the 2nd jackrabbit the Eagles took in the last 4 drafts with Dallas Goedert in the 2nd round. So you have Pierre Strong Jr., the running back from South Dakota State. I think he actually compares kind of, and this isn't on purpose, to Bruce Anderson, the running back of North Dakota, who you guys know I was a big fan of in 2019, was actually my top graded running back, but let's keep that on the down low. Pierre Strong, I think, is versatile. He has soft hands. He is good at making catches, or I should say cuts, a good vision, not a A-plus athlete, not crazy long speed, probably late 4.4s. But at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's the next day 3 running back that instantly produces from day 1. I mean, there's at least a few of those guys every year. Even a guy last year, most people don't talk about, Ramondre Stevenson from the New England Patriots. Like, you can find that guy every single year. And I feel like Pierre Strong could be that player for Philadelphia in a run-heavy offense. All right, pick 165 in the 5th round. See, I'm telling you guys, a lot of draft picks still. What do they have? Oh man, this probably wouldn't happen, but we have not drafted a single offensive lineman. That probably won't happen, right? Although they have good depth. Let's take one now. Let's go with Lucida Smith, the interior offensive lineman from Virginia Tech. Continue to boost that depth. Jason Kelsey's got one more year, most likely. So after that, you're going to want to move somebody to center, Isaac Seumalo or Landon Dickerson. You have the other guy at one of the guard spots. You have Jack Driscoll. You have Nate Herbig. Of course, considering that they, assuming they do re-sign Herbig, who's a restricted free agent, but you want to add that depth. You want to have more than one option at each spot. So taking somebody in day 3 is almost a given. Where can we double dip here? Maybe another, we've taken 2 edge rushers. Another cornerback could be on the board. Maybe another safety. A stand-up linebacker could make sense. A stand-up linebacker could make a lot of sense here. Quarterback, Bailey Zapp. You trade away Jalen Hurts. You could trade Gardner Minshew away. You might need a backup for Russell Wilson. I'm going to do it for the second time, back-to-back mock drafts for Locked On Eagles. We take Bailey Zapp, the quarterback from Western Kentucky. The Eagles have taken a quarterback every other year since, I think, like over the last decade plus, since at least going back to Kevin Cobb. Every 2 years, and the rounds vary, but the Eagles have taken a quarterback. So we went with Bailey Zapp, the quarterback from Western Kentucky, who I thought was okay at the Senior Bowl. He actually, some people down there compared him to Davis Mills. Could be a Davis Mills kind of player this year that surprises you and plays better than you think if he's given the opportunity. And if you can move Gardner Minshew for higher than the 6th round pick you spent on him last year, I say you do it. And you're going to want to replenish that QB room, because Philadelphia, they always invest in quarterback. In this draft especially, they're going to do it twice with Russell Wilson and Bailey Zapp. All right, pick 204 here in round 6, our final selection that we will make. Maybe double dip at wide receiver. Not a big fan of what's going on in that pool. Maybe an interior defensive lineman. That can make sense, but I don't really love the guys available there. Another edge rusher would be interesting. Probably not. They've invested a lot in young cornerbacks, and we've already selected Kaiir Elam in the 2nd round. You have Zach McPherson as well, day 2. You have a few other young players you got from trades last year, Vincent and Gowon. So I say cornerback will pass on as well. And we'll finish up this mock draft with one more lineman. We're going to take an offensive tackle from the University of Florida. We're going to take Gene DeLance to finish up the mock. So that's going to do it, guys. That's going to do it for your post-Russell Wilson trade mock draft. To recap what we did, the Eagles select George Karloftus, the Purdue edge rusher with the only 1st-round pick that we had, 19 overall. Kaiir Elam, the Florida cornerback at 51. Jesse Luketa, the hybrid pass rusher linebacker, Sam spot, your Jannard Avery replacement, Jesse Luketa from Penn State. A tight end in round 4, Jake Ferguson from Wisconsin. We take in round 5, Justin Ross, the receiver from Clemson, and JT Woods, the safety from Baylor. And we get a running back as well in round 5, Pierre Strong, the running back from South Dakota State. Then we take some linemen and some quarterbacks to round out our mock draft. Lucida Smith, the interior offensive lineman from Virginia Tech at 165. 192, Bailey Zapp, the quarterback from Western Kentucky. And then our final pick at 204, Gene DeLance, the tackle from the University of Florida. So there it is. I'm going to post that mock draft on Twitter after the show. This is Locked On Eagles, guys. It's Mock Draft Monday. Coming up next, I want to recap what the Locked On NFL draft team did with their first 3 picks for the Birds in today's Mock Draft Monday, Locked On NFL Draft mock draft. So we're going to see what the guys did over at Locked On NFL Draft for our birds coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is Bet Online. Football might be over this year, but look, you can still make bets on offseason props, draft props, the combine. You've got the NBA. You have college basketball, the NHL, UFC, boxing, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Make sure you head over to betonline.net for all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land. BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. Head over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action, because BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Eagles fans, thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm Louis DiBiase, wrapping up Mock Draft Monday. Today we did a post-Russell Wilson trade mock draft where we only had one first-round draft pick, but man, did we still absolutely kill it with that mock, I think at least. I would have been very happy with that scenario. Wasn't my favorite draft based on prospects selected, but I thought the Eagles filled a lot of holes with what we did there. And they fill the biggest hole, which is having a top-tier quarterback. So to finish up the show, as I teased at the end of segment 2, I want to get into what the Locked On NFL Draft guys did with their mock draft today for the Eagles, because they absolutely crushed it. If the Eagles are not going to trade their picks for Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson, I don't know, Calvin Ridley, DK Metcalf, if they're not going to make that kind of trade before the draft, and they're going to focus on building within the draft with young prospects, keeping all these selections, which I doubt will happen. But if they did, the podcast guys, they could not have done better for the birds. I love what they did. With the 15th overall pick, they took Jermaine Johnson, the Florida State edge rusher. They took Ahmad Gardner, the Cincinnati corner, Sauce Gardner for most of you, at 16 overall. And then at 19, they took the Iowa center, Tyler Linderbaum. So that makes a lot of sense, right? 2 linemen with 3 of the picks and then taking a corner. When the Eagles wanted to come away with a corner last year. I think they really wanted Patrick Surtain or J.C. Horn. I think no matter what, they wanted to come away with a corner or a receiver. And when Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts went, when Horn and Surtain went, they went up for Smith. But I think they wanted to draft a corner early last year, and they couldn't do it. They didn't want to force it. And so this year they come back around and take Sauce Gardner. If Jermaine Johnson fell, I mean, you run to the podium. I don't think he's going to fall to 15. Maybe you trade up a little bit for him. But if he's there, yeah, you don't even hesitate. And Linderbaum, look, with Jason Kelce retiring next year, there's not a really natural spot for Linderbaum in 2022. But hey, there wasn't a natural spot for Landon Dickerson either when he joined last year with Brandon Brooks and Trench and Isaac Seumalo. But injuries put him into the starting lineup. And you got to look again for the draft beyond 1 year. Linderbaum in 2023, you put him right in probably at center with Dickerson at left guard and Seumalo at right guard, and boom, you continue to have one of the best offensive lines in football. So hats off to the guys. You get Sauce Gardner to go with Darius Slay and Avonte Maddox. You get Jermaine Johnson opposite Josh Sweat, the Florida State edge rushers. Hell yeah. And then you get Linderbaum for the depth and for your future center. Works for me. Works for me. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. You can find the podcast on all platforms, wherever you get the show. We're also in video form as well on YouTube, and we're on Twitter as well, at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase, LOE. Thank you again for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure to make Locked On NFL Draft your second listen with Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback, our boy from Locked On 49ers, Eric Crocker. They bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It's free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'm Louis DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.